bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place.
Ready? Right.
This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go. Let's go. Go.
And a good off-season Monday, Birds fans. Appreciate you getting your week off with us on Birds 365. You got Mac and McMullen and McDonald here to hang with you for 2 hours. A couple of good guests. One a fairly regular contributor, our buddy Jeff Kerr from CBSSports.com, and Russell Baxter, a guy who I've been having on as a guest for over 30 years now from footballguru.com. It's going to hop in early with us today. Johnny Mac, I saw this today and I said, that's what I want to start the show with, because you are the right guy to ask about this. I saw a post on Bleeding Green Nation where our buddies BLG and John Stolness hang out, and they mentioned the Philadelphia Eagles as villains coming into the season, or to use a wrestling term, which I know you'll appreciate, as heels. The Philadelphia Eagles in 2023 will be heels in the National Football League. And it reminded me that somebody ran this by me leading up to the Super Bowl. My buddy Brandon Tierney, another one of my ex-partners, that's a growing list. I've been doing it too long, but I got too many ex-partners. Tierney came on my CBS Sports Radio show and said, it'll be good this year and going forward with the Eagles as heels. And my first thought was, no, you're wrong. The Eagles aren't heels. They've got Jalen Hurts as their quarterback, one of the most upstanding guys you can look up to, all around good guy, dedicated and everything else. And he said, but that Nick Sirianni's a bit of a heel. He screams into the camera. He goes up into the stands to point at fans in Indianapolis, and he did some heel-like things this year. I give Nick Sirianni that. But you got Jason Kelce, and I think we know here in Philadelphia how great a guy Brandon Graham is, maybe not as nationally as a guy like Kelce. But do you look at the Philadelphia Eagles as heels going into the 2023 season?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're heels. Here's how I describe it. I think you're right. The players aren't heels. The players are generally good guys. The Eagles are heels. The Eagles are always heels because the fan base is a heel to people outside the Delaware Valley. I don't think it has anything to do with the team, the players, the individuals. So if we want to go down the wrestling route, which I always want to go down, Jody.
That's why I want to start with
today. It's like John Cena. Well, he's a baby face in theory because he's a good guy, but people don't like him because, they think he's pushed or too much or whatever, and they boo him. They start booing him, and you have this half and half. Look, in the Delaware Valley, they're baby faces. Outside the Delaware Valley, people can't stand the Eagles. And it doesn't have to do with Jalen Hurts, Jason Kelce, or Brandon Graham. That's how I'll describe it. It does maybe a little bit Nick Sirianni. Brandon's right with Nick Sirianni. He rubs people the wrong way outside the Delaware Valley. But for the most part, I hear what you're saying. There's a lot of good guys on this team, and that's the absolute truth. But yeah, people do not like the. I mean, I travel all around, and there's a core Eagles group everywhere you go. The team travels well, but they do not like. Yeah, they do not like the Philadelphia Eagles, and it has nothing to do with the team, the players on the team, generally. Generally,
And maybe you got a better grasp of it because, as you correctly point out, you're on the road with the team. You're there for road games. I'm not. I'm just judging it from here in the Delaware Valley. But I can have my own general belief on how I would handle it. If I'm judging whether I do or don't like a team, rooting against, you root against them generally because they're playing your team. If you're a fan of another team, when any team comes in, they're heels as far as I'm concerned because they're trying to beat my squad. But those 31 other teams comp to each other, taking the team that I'm rooting out of it. Yeah, I would base it on the players, not the fans of that team. And yeah, I would certainly factor the coach in, but I don't know that that would be my top priority. I would base it on the play. Maybe that's why I'm having a tough time wrapping my head around this. I just know how I would look at it. And I would look at the players and how they play and how they handle themselves and what they say.
yeah, you're a little bit different. Most fans are, fans. There's nothing wrong with it. They're a little bit more emotional, and it has to do with things that objectively, how do you not root for Jalen Hurts? A hard worker. We talk about the maturity, work ethic. I don't know anybody in the world who doesn't like Jason Kelsey, other than maybe Jason Babin back in the day, that knucklehead. And Brandon Graham, nobody dislikes unless you can't stand a little trash talk here and there. I mean, that guy's got the best personality. Lane Johnson's a tremendous guy. Up and down the list, there's just a lot of good guys on this particular team. But yeah, I mean, look, we go back to 2017, and fans love their teams, and I can speak about this closely because I got this. The Eagles destroyed the Vikings in the NFC Championship game. Now, a lot of Vikings fans came and they put the jersey on. That's where the jersey on the statue, the Rocky statue, started. And Eagles fans just never let it go, and they destroyed the team. And meanwhile, the Vikings fans are back to the Packers, And there was this little thing on Twitter where, out of nowhere, they said green. Like when people talk about green in Minnesota, and I lived there for about a decade, they're talking about the Packers. That's their biggest rival by far. I mean, it's not even number 2 is not close. The Bears are, when the Bears are good, they get up there. But number 2 is not close. It's a border rivalry. It's a border battle. A lot of hatred there. Eagles fans thought it was about them. They won't let up. Now you see it with the 49ers. Like the 49ers, in a large part, they got destroyed in the championship game. They don't care about the Eagles the vast majority of the time until they're playing them that particular week. But certain players are upset and people latch on to it. Look, you say it all the time. You say it more than me. Nobody likes us and we don't care. Oh, nobody likes us. That part's right. But you care too much. You care too much that nobody likes you. Yeah, it has nothing to do with the team. The Eagles are always a heel outside the Delaware Valley, and it has to do with the fan base.
I hear what you're saying
for this, but let's be honest.
I hear what you're saying, and I'm not here to uber defend Philadelphia Eagle fans. Their reputation is their reputation, and quite honestly, it's been well earned. But that's not how I view a team. Last time I checked, anybody from the Dirty 30 is not going to go out there and play for the Philadelphia Eagles. So really, am I going to base on how I feel about the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, you're not, but a lot of fans do. A lot of fans do. And that's who we're talking about, because that's who makes somebody a babyface or a heel. It's the fans, and they take it any way they want to go with it. And, Jerry Seinfeld's got that great laundry joke. You're not rooting for players. You're rooting for laundry as a fan. Doesn't matter. Look at C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Defend him. Leaves. Oh, that asshole. Pretty much. That's how it turns on a coin. I got so much hate for hey, you know what? The Sixers should move on from Ben Simmons pretty early in the process. This isn't going to work.
Let me see if I can make my point this way. If the Eagles, because of the way that you think people look at them, are the number one heel in the NFC, who's number two?
Oh, the Cowboys are the number one heel for the same reason. The Cowboys are the number one heel. The Eagles aren't number one. They're like, which might have been upset Eagles fans more. They might be. Again, we'll go back to they're not the main eventer. They're the semi-main eventer. They're in that second category. And maybe they can bubble up if they're going to the Super Bowl or something like that. Now, the Cowboys are, again, you have a group of fans in each city that love the Cowboys. But outside of that group, they despise them. And it has to do with it doesn't have to do with the individual players. It has to do with the fan base. And a lot of them are, the old joke, Cowboys, Yankees, Lakers fan. You got so many of those people. And they're just front runners. And which is ironic because they haven't been running in front very often over the past number of years. But, yeah, the Cowboys are the number one heel.
See, I don't agree with that. I think they were, and they were far and away the number one leader in the club. Not even close was the Cowboys, and then everybody else in the NFL. Such a drop off to them being the most hated, but also the most popular with that group of fans, and they got a bigger universal fan base than anybody else. But again, see, that was tied to the team and the success of the team and the fact that they went to as many Super Bowls as they did. I don't think they're near the heel that they used to be because they're just not that good anymore. They haven't been to a Super Bowl in what? Sneaking up on 3 decades. So their heel status is lagged.
It's not the fevered pitch it once was because, as you mentioned, let's be honest, it has to do with, both sides of the equation. If you're good, people are jealous if you're good, and they hate you for that reason. If you're bad, people kind of just scoff and laugh you off. The Cowboys have been pretty good, playoff worthy, but then they lose and everybody enjoys it because they're so popular and they're America's team. And no matter what, we just went through the schedule stuff and they got the most appearances on prime time every stinking year, no matter what, with the notable exception of maybe when they're 1-15 and which is rare, but happened once. Yeah, I mean, they're just, again, there are certain teams, Yankees, Lakers, used to be the Canadians in hockey. I don't know what it is in hockey now. I'm not a hockey guy. And the Dallas Cowboys, Notre Dame at the college level. That's changed a little bit too because they're not as good as they once were. Alabama is to our producer Zander, they're baby faces, but to a lot of people they're heels. Why? Because they're so good. Georgia, same thing now because they're back-to-back national champions. A lot of people say, Georgia, but the people that love them. But to me, it's always got more to do with the fan base than the actual team because the team is revolving. And that's why I bring up the Jerry Seinfeld joke. The team is always revolving. Eagles fans are going to be Eagles fans no matter what. Doesn't matter. They're ride or die with Jalen Hurts right now. Guess what? Whenever, hopefully Jalen has a successful career and a couple Super Bowls and retires healthy, and they're going to love the next guy. Or they're going to hate the next guy if he doesn't perform. It's laundry. It's laundry.
I get it, but you put much less of an emphasis on the actual quality of the team and the players on the team. An example for me would be the Cleveland Browns. The dog pound was one of the most famous in-stadium, make it difficult for the other team. Those who were coming in hated the dog pound and the way they wore their silly masks and threw dog biscuits. Nobody gives a flying F about the dog pound anymore. Why? Because the Browns are irrelevant.
Well, they moved the
They
team
stink on ice. People now pity the Browns more than anything else. So it isn't, for me, determined by the fan base or how they handle themselves or their reputation. If you don't have the team to go with it, you become irrelevant. So how's it?
No, that part
on the team.
That part I agree with. But if you're saying, all right, from a perspective of an outside fan, all right, these guys treat me like crap for years and years and years, and then they get a good guy, and that's going to change your thoughts of the team. There are certain rivalries. Baltimore, Pittsburgh is probably the best rivalry now in the NFL. It has been. They just hate each other. Those fans are never going to like each other, ever. Now they might
shrink it down to that smaller world. Yes, I can see where just long-standing disdain because of competition between two teams. That's going to overrule everything else.
So it's never going to change. People can like individual players, and there's always going to be, players who it doesn't happen as much anymore, but we're going to have Russell Baxter on. Back in the days when you had the dirty players, the Conrad Doblers of the world, and the Jack Tatums of the world. Then you could have the real legitimate heel. Draymond Green, I guess, might be the closest. Dennis Rodman back in the day, and basketball. Was a pain in the to people. Bill Laimbeer, there's a lot of, because there's basketball players are front and center with no helmets, and you can see their faces, and they're legitimate heels. But they've taken a lot of that out of the game. Andrew Sandejo was here. He was a sort of a heel, with his red hat, make football violent again, and his penalties left and right. John Runyon, our old buddy, who ironically runs the fine system in the NFL, which is one of the funniest things to me. Because John was not the nicest player in the world. But those guys are few and far between. Yeah, I mean, people outside the Delaware Valley are never going to like the Eagles. Never. Never. They might like Jalen Hurts. But
part of the reason why I brought this up was nobody was calling the Eagles a villain when Doug Peterson fell apart. And they were 4-11. They were just the Eagles. They were how long ago was that Super Bowl championship? So I think it does ebb and flow more than others. And
if you stink, the hate is not as visceral as if you're good, but it's still there. It's dormant, and it rises up as you become more relevant.
Well, they are certainly going to be relevant this year. That's what you think. That's what I think. Let's get a third opinion on that. And from outside the Delaware Valley, we'll go outside the Delaware Valley to get this opinion. He's been covering the National Football League for decades. It's always been very good to me and come on my show when I've asked him to do so. And we've asked him today. Russell Baxter from Pro Football Guru contributes for Fanside and NFL Spin Zone as well. He's going to jump in with us next. Mac and Mac here with you on Birds 365. Russell Baxter next.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News?
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia Dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really, don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake 'em out. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again?
You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
EAGLES, Eagles.
We got Mac and Mac, McMullen and McDonald here with you on Bird 365. We are honored to have our next guest on, one of the best football writers, at least my opinion, in the country, has been for years, an NFL historian, Russell Baxter. And sometimes, Johnny Mac, things work out. I had already reached out to Russell and said, would he come on Monday, before we found out that Jim Brown had passed away during the weekend. You got three guys of relative same age here. And I think I'm the oldest of the bunch, not by much, but a little older. And I didn't see Jim Brown play. He retired in the mid-'60s. I didn't start watching football until the late 60s. But we all know of his accomplishments and how great a player he was. Russell, you've been working with, hanging with guys who certainly had the chance to watch football in the 60s. What kind of reverence do they speak of Jim Brown with?
Well, first of all, good morning, guys. It's great to see you again. We haven't done this in a couple of months. My good friend, as you know, Tom Jackson, born in Cleveland, talked about Jim Brown a lot. I think it was his father's favorite player, as a matter of fact. Every time you see a highlight of him, you see something different, and it just blows you away. I think the things that, Earl Campbell was like this, big, but deceptively fast. So when I watch Jim Brown have like five guys have an angle on him and he just zips past them up the middle of the field, it was more than just a guy who knocked people over. His balance was unbelievable. The production, he played 9 years. He was, I think, named to the Pro Bowl every year, led the league in rushing as a rookie, not with 1,000 yards, by the way. Okay. He played a lot of 12-game seasons. I think he had 1,800 yards one year. And think about that now. Okay. In a 17-game season. I think my favorite stat is for his entire career, guys. He averaged 104.3 yards per game rushing for his career. he had more total touchdowns, 126, than games played, 118. Okay, because he could catch the ball as well. But the sheer power and speed combination, well, I mean, he was just, in 1965, it was his final year.
Yeah.
He still ranks 11th all time in rushing with 12,312 yards. Yeah. That was the mark. That was one of those numbers, like Babe Ruth, 714.
Yeah. It's
Chris Berman used to talk about that. That was the number that Walter Payton broke in 1984, the 12,312, but it still ranks 11th all time. You know, I got to see him. I never spoke to him. I got to see him at the Hall of Fame when he came, you know, when they brought a lot of people back and so on. You could see the last couple of years he was starting to, it was tough for, I want to say the last 2 years I was there, he was unable to come up to the stage. And that's, you know, they have the guys come in with their gold jackets and all come up and so on. And you see that as time wears on, some of the older players and even some of the older coaches, you know, tough, but he is still the guy. And I think I wrote this in my fan-sided piece. He was the GOAT before we started naming goats. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he was, more than, he wasn't a goat. He was a ram. Okay.
That's true.
And I don't mean Los Angeles. Okay. But I mean, like I said, the combination, the size, the speed, we know it's fabled accomplishments as a lacrosse player as well. When you say Jim Brown, everybody likes to do debates, you know, who's the best this, who's best, who's this. I can't think of one single list of running backs that doesn't include him. Not one. Some people don't put on Emmett. Some people don't put on Barry. Some people don't put on, you know, different guys for different reasons. Oh, you know, Barry would have been great behind the Cowboys offensive line. Emmett wouldn't have been as good without that offensive line. Yeah, everybody, seemingly there's a lot of excuses made for players on different lists. There are no excuses, and there were no excuses for Jim Brown.
Yeah. You mentioned made the Pro Bowl. He was all pro, I believe, eight of those 9 years. And by the way, his crappy year, he was second team all pro.
Right.
So it was really 9 out of 9.
Well, and John, you know, if that was on TV today, they would say, "What's wrong with Jim Brown?"
Yeah. He's losing it.
That would have been that would have been like a 10-minute segment. What's wrong with Jim Brown?
Of course. His final season, he was the MVP. He walked away. So people remember Barry Sanders walking away at the top of his game.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody walked away at the top of their game more than Jim Brown. Yeah, he's one of those names. You know, because baseball was America's pastime, you know, back in the Babe Ruth days, I think Babe Ruth has become this mythical figure almost, deservedly so. I think Jim Brown's the Babe Ruth of football, of NFL football. I think that's who he is. A legend, you know, arguably the greatest football player of all time. You mentioned that, Russell. I've never heard anybody, there's contrarians all over the place who say, yeah, but never get a but with Jim Brown. Not one. Not one in my entire 20 plus years coming to this league. Nobody said, but about Jim Brown. No, they just said, oh yeah, Jim Brown.
Jim Brown, there is a reverence to his game. And again, as you alluded to, not only the greatest running back, but always in the discussion for the greatest football player as well. Yeah. And, you know, those are two totally different things. I don't think sometimes we put enough emphasis on greatest football player, but you could imagine he could do just about anything he wanted. He was 6'2", 230 back in the late 50s, early 60s. He'd make a hell of an inside linebacker right now.
Yeah. Well, supposedly you mentioned lacrosse. Supposedly he's better at lacrosse than football. I you know, some of these stories, you know, get maybe embellished a little bit, but a phenomenal athlete. You mentioned the highlights because I'm with you, Russell. I love watching Earl Campbell highlights. I just love them. There's something about that guy, and that's Jim Brown. The same thing. There's something about that guy who's just. And when he retired, you probably know this. I forget who was number 2. What was the gap between number 1 and number 2? It was huge.
Oh, it was huge.
Yeah,
it was huge. I'm trying to think. Well, Walter didn't come into the league until 1975.
Yeah.
I don't even know
5,000 yards. It was something.
Yeah, I don't even think there was anybody with close to 10,000. Well, now we have a bunch of guys who have 10,000 yards and so on.
Yeah.
You're right. I would have to think about that.
Could it be Marion Motley?
Well, Marion Motley got a bunch of his yards in the AAFC.
Oh, that didn't count.
And remember, the NFL doesn't count. The Pro Football Hall of Fame counts the AAFC. The NFL doesn't count the AAFC. The NFL counts the AFL. That was part of the merger agreement. All AFL records became NFL records. Trying to think.
Might have been Taylor.
And I'm doing a bunch of pieces. I'm doing a bunch of historical pieces I'm doing on right now. I've got a little theme thing going about guys ahead of their era and stuff like that. You'll see that over the next week and so on. But I think you're right, John. I think there was an enormous gap.
It might have been Jim Taylor. For some reason,
Jim Taylor, I want to say, had about 8,800 yards.
It might have been Jim. Might have been Jim.
Yeah, but didn't he retire after? Didn't he get those yards after Brown and Taylor played into the 70s, didn't he?
Oh, that's true too.
That's true too. Yeah. You're right.
Jim Brown was wrapped up by 65.
65.
I want to share with you guys it's funny what you remember, a great Jim Brown story. Growing up, we used to watch a lot of football with my dad. Even though he's a baseball guy, he loved football, and I loved spending Sunday afternoon sitting with him and watching him. And we'd see a game, and a guy would run, and he seemed to get hurt on the play. And he'd get up slowly from the tackle, and he'd just kind of meander back to the huddle. And I go, "Oh, Dad, I think the player X is hurt. This could hurt the team." And he'd go, "Yeah," or he's giving him the Jim Brown. And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Jody, I watched Jim Brown play so many games. He would get up after every single run and look like he was this close to death, that he would just struggle to get back to the huddle, and his teammate would throw his arm around, and they snap the ball in the next play, and he'd run over a 250-pound linebacker." He was playing possum with every other defender in the National Football League. Oh, poor Jim Brown might be hurt, until he hits you in the mouth on the next play and knocks you into next week. That he said, not my father. I remember my father saying this, and I'm 8 years old, 9 years old, whatever. So it's funny the things you remember. That Jim Brown was not only a better player than everybody else, but he was a smarter player than everybody else as well.
Yeah, he did. He kind of lulled you into complacency. It's like, we're going to get him this time. And then he ran past you, and that was that. So, or ran over you. But Earl, I think there's a fascination, John, with the power backs, the guys who could run and plow. I mean, poor Isaiah Robertson, rest his soul. Earl Campbell in the fourth game. It was the fourth game of his career at the Astrodome against the Rams. And Isaiah Robertson was a Pro Bowl linebacker for the Rams multi-times. He's only ever remembered, unfortunately, now for that, when Earl Campbell lowered his head and put it right into his sternum and knocked him about 5 yards back into about 2 or 3 other former Rams and Ram players and so on. And the Rams actually won that game.
Yeah.
That day. But there's that. What do people remember? Earl was something, like I said, these guys who could run you over and at the same time run around you. And that magical game that Earl had against the Dolphins in 1978 when he was a rookie on a Monday night. I'm watching him run up the right sideline, and I could swear the guy's got an angle, and 81 yards later, he's got a touchdown. And and Jim Brown, in some ways, to me, I think was even faster than Earl was, and ran away from you and so on. So, what an error. You don't see a lot of it anymore. Now you see more, guys hitting and bouncing off guys and so on. Bad tackling technique. I'm not going to go through the whole thing with that and so on, but Earl Campbell and Jim Brown embarrassed a few guys.
Yeah. The Earl Campbell, they'd have the rip away jerseys and just people grabbing them, and this entire jersey's gone. He's still going. It was, and I look at the position today, Russell, and it's kind of depressing for those of us. And I say it all the time, like and I get, to me, the game is not as aesthetic as it once was. And these are the reasons. You don't have the Earl Campbells, the Jim Browns anymore. We got a devalued position at running back. We got everybody running simplified offenses, everybody running the same thing. You don't have as much practice time. There's not these intricate Bill Walsh, masterpiece play calls. It's kind of depressing when
it's a far different game. You're not sneaking out of school whatsoever and so on. The cutback physical time in training camp doesn't allow offensive lines to develop as quickly. There's a lack of physicality. It's probably why that runaway refrigerator in Tennessee named Derrick Henry is able to abuse as many people as he is, because people are just not used to somebody upright like that, who is that quick and has a wicked stiff arm and just refuses to go down. He's like think about it. He's really the exception. Who else in this league is even close to like even a Derrick Henry, much less that era of Earl Campbell and Walter Payton at the same time with that wicked stiff arm and that relentless running style and so on. So the game has changed. There is that lack of physicality. The running backs kind of made a comeback last year in terms of production and yards and 100-yard games, but at the same time, you got to do.
And by the way, real quick, Russell, I don't want to disparage the athletes today. They're phenomenal, but the technique, the fundamentals, because there simply isn't as much practice time. You mentioned tackling. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, they don't even.
No, I don't think you're, John. I'll be honest with you. I don't think you're disparaging the athletes whatsoever. I think it's the evolution or de-evolution of the game and the league that we are seeing this right now. I mean, you're never going to convince me that these guys don't want to hit other people. Okay, they spent their high school and college careers for the most part hitting other people, and now it's for safety's sake and money's sake and so on. That physicality in the league is de-emphasized. Let's just spread them out and let them catch the ball. And that's why I laugh when I hear people comparing players, especially quarterbacks, the 50s to 60s.
Oh, I saw you over the weekend arguing with some knucklehead about Joe Namath. Like, I don't have a problem. I was telling Jody this last week. Look, you don't have to get into the history of any game if you don't want to, but then don't talk about the history. It's a completely different game. Joe Namath is a no-brainer Hall of Famer, but people pull up Pro Football Reference and say, well, so-and-so's got better statistics than Joe Namath. Right. Well, you're allowed to play defense back there. You're allowed to get all over the receivers. It's amazing to me.
One of my favorite examples is actually Bradshaw. Okay. Yeah. Because Terry threw 2 more touchdown passes than interceptions for his career. Yeah. So a lot of people, he had a great defense and blah, blah. You know what? That was true with the first 2 Super Bowls. Okay. But and this is why I always call the 70s Steelers the best team in the league. I say the Patriots were the greatest dynasty, because when you do it for 20 years, 20 years is 20 years. Yep. Okay. But when you win 4 Super Bowls in 6 years and do it 2 different ways, that to me showed the greatness of the Steelers. The league, as you guys know, made the major rule changes in 1978. Okay. No more beyond 5 yards with the receiver. Offensive linemen were allowed to extend their arms in terms of pass blocking. I think they moved the hashtags that year and so on. Who won the first 2 Super Bowls throwing the ball for the most part? Pittsburgh, with Swan, Stallworth, Cunningham, Grossman, and Bradshaw, who had it matured by that time and so on. In fact, he was the MVP of the first 2 Super Bowls after the rules changes. Yeah. And again, one of my favorite stats, it just shows you how much the game is different. In 1979, a lot of people know the Steelers were all homegrown that year. Okay. They didn't have anybody who played for them who played for another organization. Guys, they turned over the ball. By the way,
that is amazing.
Ball 52 times during the regular season, and led the NFL in scoring.
That's pretty much says it all. Russell Baxter here with us on Birds 365. Quick reference to a guy who was in the news this weekend, A.J. Brown, who almost injured himself in the Eagles Autism Challenge riding a bike this weekend. His phone went down. Luckily, AJ didn't go down, but I used him to make a point. If AJ Brown was born in 1979 rather than 1999, I guarantee you he would have been a running back. But because the game has changed, AJ Brown knows that they throw the ball more, they run the ball, and oh, by the way, they're going to get paid that much more going forward. Oh, he was a man ahead of his time. I guarantee you, with his size, his athletic skills, if he had born 20 years younger, he would have been a running back. That's no longer the case. It's all about the passing game in the NFL.
These bigger kids, I would guess that these bigger kids now with a little speed, maybe wanted to do something else before in football. A lot of them want to be edge rushers now. There's a lot of money in picking up sacks.
You got to be pretty big on the edge side. All right, Russell. No, you just put up a post about the needs of the teams in the NFC East. We'll see if you're as bullish on the Eagles as our pal Peter King is, who said a team with no weaknesses. Can't find a weakness on him when he ranked his 32 teams in his MMQB column a couple of weeks ago. Philadelphia Eagles, what needs do they have? What weaknesses do they have?
Well, that inability to stop the run cost them dearly in the Super Bowl. Okay. And it cost them dearly throughout the second half of the season, although they were able to make up for it in a lot of instances. Okay. When you have 70 sacks during the regular season and then 8 more in 2 more playoff games and get none in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, was the Kansas City offensive line that dominant, or did Andy Reid decide to run the ball at them in the second half?
True.
And which is exactly what happened. The Eagles were tied for 16th in the league in run defense. Okay. So, and when you can't stop the run, this is one thing about the game that's never changed. If you can't stop the run, theoretically, you're not going to be able to stop anything, because then once the team starts play action passing off of you, the receivers are going to be wide open downfield. I mean, the Chiefs pretty much did anything they wanted in the second half because they went to the run and exploited that Eagle run defense. And I think that still is a weakness. I don't know how sound they are at inside linebacker. I know they got Jalen Carter, but they don't have Javon Hargrave. And, this is going to be the 104th season in the league. I'm pretty sure no quarterback has ever thrown a touchdown pass from the sidelines. Okay. And, I think I've looked that up for 103 years. And that's a good way to keep Jalen Hurts and that offense off the field, is by controlling the ball against them. Now, a lot of teams run out of patience. That's the one thing, as you know, teams run out of patience. They fall behind. But in this league now, where 10-point lead, it used to be you could never blow a 10-point lead in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Okay, it's now happened 4 times in the last 9 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize
It only
that.
happened twice in the first 48 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Okay. The Saints came back against the Colts, and Doug Williams and the Redskins came back against the Broncos. That was it. 10-0. We've seen double-digit leads. We saw a 25-point lead disappear in the Super Bowl because the game has changed.
Yeah.
But the one thing that hasn't changed is being able to keep that other team off the field. And the Chiefs were able to do that in the second half. So I disagree that is still a problem for them unless they can prove they can stop the run.
So how do you combat that? Because it goes far beyond Philadelphia, Russell. We were in double digits of teams that ran the Fangio defense last year of the NFL, which basically is designed to limit explosive passing plays. They play light boxes. They're not really overly concerned with stopping the run. And I tell Jody every year, nobody cares about stopping the run until they have to care about stopping the run. When the weather gets bad, late in the season, Northeast, Midwest, some outdoor games. But you can't tackle in training camp. Nobody tackles anymore.
Correct.
Is it just getting better during the season? Is it, how do you do it in today's environment? Because we talked about the physicality, and that's what the running game is.
Yeah, and even the teams that have gaudy rushing numbers, they aren't necessarily physical football teams either. Okay. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, and a couple of years ago, they set an NFL record for most rushing yards in the season. Okay. But they're doing a lot of that with the quarterback is not wearing down your defense. Okay. I think that's the biggest problem for the Buffalo Bills. Okay. Is, and they just signed Damian Harris. They brought in Latavius Murray this offseason. But they're not wearing down the opposition. And the more you put your quarterback out there, the more he is prone to turnovers. Josh Allen has not solved his turnover issues. Okay. As close as they've gotten, I mean, in the playoffs 4 straight years, they've been to the AFC title game once over that span. He still is very slot. Hell, he dropped the ball on the goal line against the Vikings, which in essence, they wound up losing that game in overtime. So if you're expecting, well, let's put it this way. If you're expecting Josh Allen to beat Jim Brown, it ain't going to work. Okay. Now, Philadelphia, I will say, has one of the better offensive lines in the league. And I'll be interested to see how they overcome the loss of Isaac Seumalo, who went to Pittsburgh and so on. I know they drafted a kid, and we'll see. They're pretty good at developing offensive linemen. But that, John, you're spot on, and so are you, Jody. There is not this physicality around the league, and and it's funny. I've been watching what Pittsburgh's been doing this offseason. It's almost like Mike Tomlin and Matt Canada and the organization, new GM and so on. It's almost like they're getting ready to play 1960s football.
Okay, I've been waiting for somebody to do it. Yeah. I've been waiting for somebody to look at 250-pound linebackers, Russell, and say, you know what? I'm going to blow these guys off the ball. And
Pittsburgh got rid of all its inside linebackers. Okay, they added Isaac Seumalo. They drafted Broderick Jones. They brought in some hard-hitting special teams players. They brought in Keanu Neal, who can be a linebacker and one of the more physical players in the league. One of these outliers is going to do some damage around the league. And I'm not saying it's Pittsburgh because I want to see him on the field yet, but it's interesting to watch the style of team that they are building right now and how the other 31 teams would have to deal with that if they're going to continue to spread the field. And as you guys alluded to, poor tackling, lack of physical play in training camp and so on. Somebody's going to come in there and like, whoa, are you allowed to do that?
Yeah, we'll see who's got the nerve enough to do it. Pittsburgh's a good team to keep an eye on before the season gets underway with their offseason moves. All right, give me the offseason moves for the 3 other teams in the NFC East. Off last year, Eagles 14-3. Cowboys were 12-5. Some people think they're the second best team in the NFC. 49ers, Cowboys 2-3. Put them whatever order you so desire. And then you got the Giants and the Commanders. I just looked at the standings. I didn't even realize there's only one game between the Giants and the Commanders last year. And there was that questionable call late in the season game between the Giants and the Commanders that had gone the other way. Maybe the Giants don't even make the playoffs. It seems like the Giants were that much better than the Commanders last year. They really weren't, maybe because they won that playoff game, went into Minnesota and won. Is there a big difference between the Giants and the Commanders coming into this season? If Dallas and Philly are 1-2 and the other two are trying to catch up, is Washington that much further behind? That's the way it seems to me. Maybe I'm not a big Sam Howell fan. Sorry, I think there's a little derivation. Are the Commanders and the Giants both making progress on catching the Eagles?
Well, the Giants first have to prove they can even stay on the field with the Eagles. Okay? I mean, that's a major problem. In fact, the Giants' biggest problem is playing within the division. Okay? I mean, if you count the playoffs last year, they had a winning record and they were 1-5-1 versus their NFC East rivals. Okay? And in all 3 except the game at the end of the year where they still managed to lose in week 18 and so on, but they got blown off the ball the other 2 games. The one at MetLife State was like 48-22 or so on. I mean, that was just that was embarrassing to watch. It was hard to believe they wound up being a playoff team. And I know the Giants won a playoff game, but they played the second worst defense in the league. Minnesota was absolutely, that whole division for the most part, the NFC North was horrific defensively and so on. But remember that the Giants were 9-7-1. Washington was only a game behind them.
Yeah.
At 8-1. I mean, that nobody in that division had a losing record. 3 of the teams made the playoffs. All 3 teams, by the way, won a playoff game. Okay. So, I mean, that was pretty formidable by the NFC East. But the Giants, you know, they hadn't been in the playoffs since 2016. Their divisional record over the last couple of years has been absolutely horrible. Okay. So they have to me, they have to prove they can beat Philadelphia and Dallas before they can take any step forward. You know, people have mixed emotions on the Cowboys this year. And I know Dak did not finish strong and so on. And defensively, they were a little erratic. And Dak Prescott's never been a big guy in terms of turnovers. But the last 2 years, he hasn't been as careful with the ball. I don't know if that's because of health concerns or whatever. But I think the thing that keeps Washington down is what you already alluded to, is the uncertainty of a Sam Howell. I mean, are we going to be surprised if he's not their only starting quarterback this year? Because I think, as I wrote in the piece, the last time Washington started a quarterback for all 16 games was Kirk Cousins, and that was 2017, and that was his final year there. So they have been, and listen, Alex Smith was sad what happened to him and so on. Yeah. But Ryan Fitzpatrick was in there for about 2 quarters and got hurt a couple of years ago. They haven't been able to keep guys healthy. And they've got some nice, young, exciting talent around them on both sides of the ball. And they went into Philadelphia last year, gutty, and beat the Eagles.
Yeah, the only game Jalen Hurts lost until the Super Bowl.
So I mean,
as a starting quarterback.
There's certainly some talent there. I don't think there's any question about it. So I don't think the gap is that big between Washington and the Giants. The only divisional game that the Giants won last year was to beat Washington.
Russell Baxter at Bax Football Guru. Make sure you follow Russell on Twitter. You can read him at Fanside, at NFL, bunch of places. ProFootballGuru.com, NFL Spin Zone. He's all over the place. Last one from me, Russell. I assume you're going to Canton.
Oh, yes.
It's always one of the funnest places to be for the Hall of Fame induction. Anybody you're looking forward to this year? Jody's excited. You got Joe Klecko and Darrelle Revis for his Jets. Couple Cowboys going in. Eagles fans won't like that. You know, I used to do radio in Cincinnati a bunch, and I've been calling for Ken Riley to be in the Hall of Fame for a very, very long time, and he finally got in. Anybody you're looking forward to in this class?
I think Klecko, to me, really stands out. He's a Pro Bowler at 3 different positions. You know, defensive end, defensive tackle, nose tackle. Probably one of those over 2 guys. I love the fact that the Hall has expanded the Veterans Committee. That we do get this many guys in. John, you talked about Ken Riley. Well overdue, you know, and it's funny because I remember when Paul Krause finally got in. It took him a while.
Oh my God! Yeah, I lived in many. Paul was the mayor of Lakeville, Minnesota when I was out there. But
I was in Hawaii. Those are my ESPN days. So we were able to. We did a lot of stuff with the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Even before we started doing the live telecast of the induction ceremonies, they used to do the tape because the ceremony used to be much, much different. Used to be at 11 o'clock in the morning on the steps of the Hall. Now it's at the stadium and all that. But I got a chance to meet Paul Krause, and I think I said to him, you know, finally. I mean, Ken Riley had 65 interceptions. Paul Krause had 81 interceptions and 19 fumble recoveries. That's 100 takeaways, and he wasn't a first ballot. And I think we understand probably why. I think there were probably voters. I can't pin anyone down. Those Vikings Super Bowl losses, which of course were all Paul Krause's fault. Nobody else's.
But you know what's funny you say that, Russell, because I believe if they didn't make the Super Bowl, if they say lost like they do now in a bunch of NFC championship games, and he didn't have that on his resume, he would have been if not first ballot, second, right away, he would have been in just for, I mean, think about it. I'll go back to baseball. We know why Pete Rose is not in the Hall of Fame, but he would be. The home run king's in the Hall of Fame. The interception. He's still got the interception record. When the guy he still got it.
Yes.
It
and
is
probably will hang on to it for a long time because you don't see as many interceptions
Yeah.
now. Okay.
Oh,
Like
he's gonna have
I want to
it
say
forever.
the active leader in the league. I don't even know if he has 40,
Yeah. He's
much
gonna
less
have it
50 something
for-
and so on.
for
But I couldn't
perpetuity.
understand. Here's the guy who has the most of something, and he's not in the Pro Football
Yeah.
Hall of Fame.
It's
I mean, that just exactly to your point, John. How can you have the most of something not be in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
So,
And it all had to do with Super Bowl losses. If you
yeah,
take
I
those
mean,
Super
we
Bowl
saw a lot
losses,
of those
yeah.
Viking guys kind of wait and not necessarily be Hall of Fame. But
Yeah.
I always look at those Vikings team, and I always point out the fact that they did play 4 Super Bowls and never scored a point in the first half of any of those games.
Wow.
Okay. But I also like to point out this. No team in the 10-year history of the AFL won more games than the Kansas City Chiefs. They lost to them. They played a Dolphins team in the Super Bowl in 73, at least in my opinion, that was better than the undefeated 72 team because they were more seasoned and they were more dominant. They happened to get at the beginning of the Pittsburgh Steelers dynasty. Okay. And then a couple of years after that, ran into a very frustrated Oakland Raiders team who couldn't get to the Super Bowl because they couldn't get past Miami and Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they played 4 really good, great football teams. I mean, hell, the Chiefs, the Chiefs have, when they won Super Bowl 4, 6 of their 11 defensive starters are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Jim Marshall's still not in the Hall of Fame.
Jim
That's
Marshall's
one.
still not in.
He's still
Eller
not in.
and I know they campaign for him, and there's been Bud Grant passing away within the last couple of months and so on. There's been a lot of
I tell Jody that story. I think I met Jim Marshall probably when he was 65-ish. So he's probably a senior citizen, Russell. I met him for the first time. I shook his hand. It was like a vice. It was like, to this day, I have never, and this is a 65-year-old man.
Yeah.
I have never, and Adrian Peterson is famous for his handshake. Not even close to 65-year-old Jim Marshall. It was unbelievable. I still wake up with sweats thinking about that handshake.
Well, talk about intimidating. I'll give you this story. We were doing a live shot at the steps at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And my boss, and a gentleman, Jody knows, Bob Rauscher. I was there I can't remember if it was there on my own dime or whatever and so on. And because it was very, very early in the early days of my career there and so on. So we're doing a live shot on the steps at ESPN. And Bob says to me, and a production assistant, make sure no one gets in the shot. Okay. So they're doing a live shot and 2 guys start walking up. And they turned around and looked at me. And it was Gale Sayers and more significantly, Ray Nitschke. And I look at the production assistant and I said, you tell him.
Smart man, that Russell Baxter always has been, always will be. And by the way, have a great time out in Canton when you do go out.
Well, hopefully we can do something before we go out. I go out.
Yeah.
There.
Oh no,
It's
we'll
always a
definitely
great
get
time.
down again before that. But just wanted to mention, I've only been stumping for Joe Klecko for 25 years. I don't actually believe my saying it as many times I said on the air actually got him in. But as you were just discussing, keeping the name in the conversation, others around him, doesn't hurt. And hopefully it made its way through to the Hall of Fame voters because, you're looking about as big a Joe Klecko fan as there is out there. I'm also a fan of Russell Baxter. That's why we ask him to come on. Always appreciate it when he does. Yeah, we'll get you on again before you go out to Canton. Russell, a pleasure, buddy. Thanks.
I always enjoy doing this because we get to reminisce and at the same time talk about what's going on in the league. I love the. It reminds me of, shameless plug, my page on Facebook, Football Past and Present. We do a lot of modern day stuff, and we do a lot of history stuff. And some of the Hall of Fame voters like Rick Goslin and Clark Judge, John Turney John Turney is a guy who's not a Hall of Fame voter, but he's the guy who worked together with Pro Football Reference. And that's why you now see the sack numbers for the guys dating back. He's the guy. He's the guy. He's the guy who really put that into motion. And now you see on some of my tweets, I reference blah, 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 career sacks since via Pro Football Reference. The NFL isn't necessarily acknowledging them, but Pro Football Reference is. John Turney was the guy who went back and did all the research, media guides, film, all that different stuff to get those accurate sack numbers. So that's why.
By the way, who's number one? Deacon? Deacon's number one, right?
It's Bruce Smith. I mean,
Bruce
would tell you, I think they have Deacon at like 173.5. Okay, something like that. Reggie had 198, and Bruce Smith had 200.
Wow.
Okay.
I thought when they went back, I thought Deacon surpassed him. But
John, the one that's the most interesting, and again, I think the official number is what Michael Strahan and TJ Watt with 22.5.
22, yeah.
Okay.
One season.
But if you go back to Pro Football Reference, I'm just doing this off the top of my head. Al Bubba Baker.
Bubba
from the Lions.
He was a great pass rusher.
Yeah. Well, Pro Football Reference has him with 23 as a rookie.
Wow. As a rookie.
What year was that?
Wow.
1978, I believe.
Okay.
Wow.
So
here's my shameless plug for Pro Football Reference, PFREF on Twitter.
Yeah.
16 game season?
It's the first 16 game season.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. At least he did it on the same number as the guys that held the record thereafter. Russell, we kept you as long as we did. Thank you very much for sticking around as long as you did. You know, we're going to get you back. Talk soon, bud.
All right, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Russell Baxter, ProFootballGuru.com, also contributes for Fansided and NFL Spin Zone. All right, Johnny Mac, Jody Mac. We still got that hour to play here, so stick around on Birds 365.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood days.
Score and save at Southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing, the second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs, and then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
E-A-G-L-E-S. Eagles.
Got your back guys. Go to McDonald's and John McMullen here with you on Birds 365. Thanks to Orbit Moon on our stream here, who said Jody Dunn forgot again to say hit the like button. He's right. I forgot again. Sorry about that. Please do us a favor. We need help with our algorithm. We got to run up the numbers here on Birds 365. And oh, by the way, that's a prime example of Russell Baxter. We here on YouTube, less constraint. If a segment runs long, it's not a problem because
we don't have to hit hard breaks.
No, we don't. It's not like doing radio where you got to keep the audience churning and moving and get your breaks in time, not go too long. Here we can do it basically any way we want. So it doesn't really matter. I remember once I had Russell on one night and we were just having such a friendly, yet I think we were debating something, but Russell's such a nice guy. He wouldn't get into the nitty, screaming and yelling and stuff like that. But we disagreed on something. And I looked up at the clock and we had done 35 friggin' minutes. You don't do 35 minutes on radio. You don't have a 35-minute interview on radio. We have it here on Birds 365. Why? Because we can. Because there aren't hard breaks and time constraints we have to hit. But I did 35 minutes with Russell and I go, oh, I better get the break. Russell, gotta go. Thank you very much. Appreciate it greatly. He's just that kind of guy that you start talking football with him and memories and stuff like that. It's just,
he got me going with Paul Krause.
With your Viking stuff.
Now, Jody, I haven't asked you. You considering going out there? Because that's one of the funnest things, and you're a big Joe Klecko guy, and plus you got Terrell Revis as well. I mean, that is a fun weekend if you're a fan of a team and players are going in. Canton is spectacular.
It is. I've been to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, not on Hall of Fame weekend. I've never been to Hall of Fame weekend. Watch it like 99.9% of all of our streamers on television. I would like to, but I probably am not going to be able to get the time off weekends. I work weekends. So that's when they have the Hall of Fame proceedings at a different time in my life. I might have been able to get out there. I don't know that I'm going to be able to, but not only will I be watching it, I'll be recording it, saving it for posterity. So I can go back and check out my guy, Joe Klecko, finally getting in. All right, Johnny Mac, did want to ask you this. I saw a couple of posts over the weekend about the almost incident with A.J. Brown. Got to tip the cap to Jeffrey Lurie and the Philadelphia Eagles, and they've worked the work they've done for Eagles fight with autism. That they've now raised their total to over $22 million raised, which is off the charts great. Record-setting weekend, over $6 million. Congratulations to Birds and everybody who participated. It is a truly tremendous and worthy cause that they fight for on a year in, year out basis. But they almost lost their WR1 wide receiver one, A.J. Brown, who is... And we talk about social media a lot here on the show because we have to, because people are so engrossed with it these days. He's recording a video to put on social media, and he said that a car blew a red light. I'll take him at his word, but he had the camera pointed at himself, not the car. He did thereafter. After the camera went down, he got a quick look at it. How tremendously bad could that have been if A.J. Brown gets hurt doing an Eagles charity event?
To the point where you got not the charity event. The charity event will continue and should continue. But, yeah, you got to get the players off those bikes. I mean, let them – because it's a bike race, not a race, but a bike ride plus a walk. You know, you got like a 5K walk. Now, I know from a player's perspective, they probably want to go the 10 miles and get it over with. But anybody who's been in South Philly, as you mentioned the video, there was a part of the video you hear somebody saying, "Man, watch out," or something of that nature, and people took that as the driver doubling down, yelling at AJ. It was actually somebody riding along. Thankfully, AJ clarified that. Riding along, because I feel, bad for that driver, because there's going to be social media detectives trying to down that poor soul. Obviously I wasn't there, so I don't know what happened, but look, you can get hurt anywhere. We all know that. It's a bike ride. It's not that big of a deal. But when it's under your auspices and you can control it, just have them walk. Just have them walk. Jimmy Graham just got hurt riding his bike pretty significantly as well. Doesn't play anymore, but I mean, nobody's saying shut down the autism challenge, but I am saying let the players do the walk. Don't put them on bikes in South Philadelphia on a rainy Saturday morning, because look, they're going to leave in June and they're going to do a bunch of stuff, and you can't control things. But when it is you're under your auspices, you can control it.
Yeah.
So that's why I say, just have them walk. Just do the walk.
See, it's funny. You're putting it more on the Eagles.
I'm
putting it more on AJ Brown. And you're right. Walking is risk. You could hit a pothole and get hurt walking. You up the risk when you get on a bike and you're riding. It's a little bit more dangerous than just walking. But here's how you cut down on the danger. Don't record it. Actually ride the bike. How about pay attention to what you're doing rather than, got to get a social media video out there for everybody to see.
But
that's what you do. You just tell your plate, listen, if you want to ride the bike because you think it'll be more fun, get in some exercise, okay, fine. We're going to ask you to ride the bike and not do anything else. I'm putting this on AJ Brown, and it's a kind of a statement about all social media. People are so caught up on it. They do foolish things. They say foolish things. They type they put foolish videos out there. John Morant. And then you get AJ Brown here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, but in this case, the Eagles are encouraging people to raise money for the charity. And how do you do that? You go on social media. A lot of people have their own pages. You match their donations, and AJ's trying to help the charity. I can't blame but I'm not blaming the Eagles. I'm not blaming AJ. I'm not even blaming the driver, because I don't know what happened. I'm saying it from the Eagles' perspective. If I'm the organization, I'm like, this is not, rural somewhere. This is South Philadelphia. It's a 10-mile bike ride, 30-mile bike ride. Anybody's been in South Philadelphia knows it's not the easiest place to ride a bike. Yeah, I mean, I'm not doing it. I walk for the do the 5K walk. Players maybe don't have to go as long. You want to get them out of there a little bit quicker. Everybody gets to meet them, gets to glad hand them. You can still do it without that added danger. And not that they've been doing it. This is the 6th time they've done it. This is the first time there's ever been any kind of hiccup. So it's not like it's a necessity.
To an Eagle player. Howard went down on a bike a couple of years ago.
Well, that's true too. And they can control it. That's the only reason I say it, because it's under their control. They can say, you know what? Don't worry about the bikes. We're just going to walk. That would be my advice. And nobody's asking for it, but that would be my advice.
And my advice would be the biking. Well, yeah, it's South Philly. I get it. It's not like they're out there driving around in a circle on a track or anything. I think it's certainly negotiable. They've only had 2 incidents. One with Howard, a little on the older side to be riding a bike, and one with AJ Brown yesterday. If he wasn't trying to tape something for social media, I'm guessing we would not have had an incident. That's where I would start. Cameras down while driving. Right before you want to put out a post, before you start peddling, go for it. As soon as you're done, you want to put out a post, help us trade somebody, do it, please. While you're actually riding the bike, no, put the camera away, AJ. That would just be my take on it. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. We have Jeff Kerr of CBSSports.com coming up. The Eagles this week, not working out. 20 of the 32 NFL teams start today with OTAs. 10 more start tomorrow with OTAs. So 30 out of 32 teams will start off-season activities this week. The Philadelphia Eagles will not. The Philadelphia and the Cincinnati Bengals, the only two teams that aren't. And we know why the Bengals aren't doing it, because they're cheap. The Eagles don't do it because they think they've got the better way. And you can't argue with the success they had last year at 14-3 and the number of injuries if you specifically tie those two things together. And I think you can, not hard and fast, but I think you can draw conclusions about the time, the effort, the amount of work, the contact, and everything else. The Eagles think that they've got a better way of doing things. They've built the better mousetrap, so to speak. We'll talk about that with Jeff Kerr, upcoming season, all those things. John McMullen, Jody McDonald, both here with you on Birds 365. Jeff Kerr is next.
Weather forecasting is a team game.
We rely on each other every day, updating the models and passing along new critical information.
We have a team of 5 experienced meteorologists and a specialized weather producer, Paul. Say hi, Paul.
Sometimes what I see in the model, Cecily could see something different.
That's when we come together as a team to make our most accurate prediction.
And all of this backed by more than 100 AccuWeather scientists. It's a team game.
And we have the best team in town.
When it comes to the fight against insurance companies, large corporations, and the healthcare industry, injured victims are always the underdog. But that doesn't worry us. At Messa & Associates, we're an injury law firm from Philadelphia, and we come to fight. Our clients know that they've got representation with a chip on its shoulder, and it's the same chip that makes Philly the toughest city in the country. Call 215-568-3500 or visit us online at messalaw.com. Messa & Associates, the toughest injury firm in Philadelphia.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Celebrating the life of your loved one is what we do at Life Celebrations by Givnish. When the matriarch of the Dalloway family died suddenly at 82 years old, Life Celebrations by Givnish stepped in.
They will make this the easiest thing that I know it's not easy, but they will make this as easy as possible.
Life Celebrations by Givnish, customizing services as unique as the individual.
I just know that my dad, who is in charge of everything, was not in charge of anything at that point when my mom passed. And again, just another shout out to this place for making it easy.
Turning tragedy into a celebration of life, no matter how hard, is what we do at Life Celebrations by Givnish. Life Celebrations by Givnish, customizing services as unique as the individual.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac guys, Jody Mac, Johnny Mac, hanging with you on Birds 365. We hope Jeff Kerr tops in here in just a couple of seconds. So, John, while the rest of the reporters around the National Football League, or at least 30 out of 32 teams, are working this week, and you've got the week off because the Eagles have decided not to start their off-season program just yet, what are you going to do with yourself?
I wish, but, the Eagles Yeah, and part of it is, I think the bigger part of the Eagles off season is no mini camp, and Cincinnati also. Those are the only two teams with no mandatory mini camps. Starting a week late, that might have something to do with the Super Bowl, to be honest. I don't remember. I'll have to look it up if they started. The end game's the same. They're going to have the same number of OTAs. And they're not doing mandatory minicamp from what they've done in the past. In other words, they haven't scaled back further than what they have. But they already scaled back.
Right.
But they haven't scaled back further. And the fact that it's a week later than everybody else might have something to do with the Super Bowl. And even with Cincinnati, by the way. And you're right, Cincinnati's cheap and has been. And they have some issues. And we talked about it with Joe Burrow's impending contract. But this isn't about cheapness. They believe in whatever they believe in.
Well, quick question for you. As far as you know, do they start Tuesday of next week since Monday is Memorial Day?
Yeah, the 30th. So what's today? The 22nd.
30th would be Tuesday.
Yeah.
So other teams are starting on Mondays and the Eagles are starting on a Tuesday. So they are scaling back from where they were last week because they pushed it back a week into Memorial Day week.
No, they pushed it back a week. What I'm saying is they haven't scaled back their number of OTA practices. They already scaled that back.
How many did they have last year? Do you know?
Well, that's what I'm saying. They have the same amount, but they're not doing minicamp. So the week back is about, probably about the Super Bowl. And they went so long. Now they do less work than anybody else. Look, but it's been that way since Nick Sirianni's got there. That's all I'm saying. It started during the last of the death throes of the pandemic when he negotiated with the veteran players to get them in for off-season work. That's when it started. I don't think they planned on continuing it, but it went well from a health standpoint. So they said, let's keep it. And last year they went to the Super Bowl, so nobody's complaining. So they said, let's keep it. That's sort of where it all manifested from.
And we'll see if it actually turns out to be as much as they did last year or as little as they did last year or less. Wouldn't be surprised if it's less. All right, Jeff Kerr is in our waiting room. He jumps in with us here on Birds 365. I'm sure you just heard what Johnny and I were talking about. The Eagles last year cut back their off-season activities, cut back their training camp activities, and they went 14-3, and they were tied in the Super Bowl with 8 seconds to go. Yeah, they didn't win, but they were that close to winning it. You don't expect them to change. If they do change, it's going to be even less is more, right, Jeff Kerr?
Well, they are practicing the same amount as what McMullen said. It's just they're doing it a week later, and they don't use the mandatory minicamp. They're not the only team that doesn't use it, but I do know 20 NFL teams are starting today, but as McMullen pointed out, a lot of those teams either A, didn't make the playoffs, or B, were eliminated early in the playoffs. So, like the Eagles and the Bengals, I think, are two of the teams that don't start till next week. And I frankly didn't take notice of the teams that did start today until, then I was looking at the power. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that team wasn't good last year. That team wasn't good last year. Or that team made the play. I think the Giants might be the only team that made the divisional round of the playoffs and are starting today, but I could be wrong on that.
Yeah, and I don't, no, let's be honest. I think the Eagles are proven, to be honest, that OTAs are not the be all end all. I mean, it's good to get people up to speed, but I don't know how shifting the calendar a week is going to affect things as long as you get your done. The bigger point to me is minicamp. The Eagles are one of two teams that don't have mini camps. They haven't had a mini camp in the Nick Sirianni era, but it's hard to argue about that, Jeff, because they haven't seemed to struggle with no mini camp. So, if they did struggle, I think we would be hyping this up to no end. But I find it hard to criticize them with not only the the success, but also the relative health compared to other teams. Whether they found a magic bullet, I don't think they are. I don't think they have. I think they've just gotten a break or two. And I don't know if that can continue. But if they do have a bad season with injuries, I'm not going to rewind back to say, oh, if they had minicamp, they probably wouldn't have got injured. I don't see the correlation. Am I wrong there?
I don't see it either. As a matter of fact, even if they had major injuries last year, I would have went back to, well, the depth of their team was incredible. And I think that's what I'm concerned about a little this year at certain positions, like linebacker, like safety. I think that's where we're having depth questions. But if they suffer a major injury at, say, defensive tackle, like they did with Jordan Davis last year, they have guys there. They have Jalen Carter. They have Fletcher Cox. And Ndamukong Suh's a phone call away. And from what I gathered, he loved his time in Philly last year. I don't think he's willing to go to training camp anytime soon.
He said he's done with camp. He's done with camp.
I think he set a precedent, by the way. I think a lot of veterans are going to take his route.
I've been telling Jody this. The Eagles created a market, man, for guys who played and made a lot of money, like Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph. Why do they want to come in and go through this grind for the veteran minimum or a little bit over the veteran minimum? Just go ring shopping in November and say, all right, who needs a defensive tackle? I'm here. I kept myself in shape. I think it's smart. Chris Harris is talking about doing it.
Yeah, I think Odell Beckham played that market well. He got himself notable in November and December. Then the workouts kind of came out. Okay, he's not fully back yet, and I think he was smart and said, you know what, I'll back off. I'm not going to play for X amount of money for a team trying to make a Super Bowl. What I'll do is I'll sign a thrifty contract in the offseason. He got $15 million from the Baltimore Ravens. I think he was a huge winner.
Yeah.
How much do you think, since you went there, Jeff, do you think that played into Lamar's deciding to re-sign? I think very little, if anything, but I've read.
I know he wanted them.
That was a key, that they were boys and he wanted them to sign. And the Ravens, that's why the Ravens paid him as much as they did, that they thought he could be the final domino to Lamar re-signing. I think it was much more about Jalen Hurts getting his deal done and setting the parameters of what the money needed to be, rather than OBJ becoming a Raven. How about you?
There were a couple factors with Lamar. Well, one, he always did want to go back to Baltimore. I think he wanted to test the market, but I agree with you, Jody. I think he wanted to test the market to see what he could potentially get in the market and go back to Baltimore and say, hey, look, this team values me like this. And then the Jalen Hurts deal got done. And I always said the Eagles would have been smart to sign Jalen before Lamar. They did that. So Lamar had a benchmark now. And I think Baltimore said, yeah, we can make this work. And I think he always wanted to go back. But I think it also helped Baltimore, got Todd Monken as an offensive coordinator. They drafted Zay Flowers. Now, again, this was after Lamar signed, but they helped him there. Nelson Aguilar is what he is. He's going to be, I think he'll be productive for them in that offense. But the Odell Beckham thing definitely helped because it at least showed Lamar that, hey, we're actually willing to get better at wide receiver. And this is by far the best wide receiver core Lamar Jackson has ever thrown to. Oh, and he's got Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely at tight end.
Yeah, but does he want to throw? Lamar is great throwing at tight ends. I mean, and Mark Andrews is a part of that, but the Ravens have had good tight ends for years and years and years. He's just comfortable doing it. I've seen no evidence that he wants to throw the football consistently, at least outside the numbers. Are people making too big of a deal out of that? The Ravens offense is going to be the Ravens offense. Running game's a big part of it because of Lamar. He's going to throw the ball to Andrews, especially in big spots. Any of that change with all these receivers everybody's so excited about?
Yeah, see, this is where I get tied up here because I want to see where them actually throw the ball to the outside. And I think it is going to change. I don't think we're going to see as much. I'm trying to word this as best I can. I think you're going to see the volume go to Mark Andrews, but I think Mark Andrews is also going to be susceptible to deeper passes now because you're going to have guys like Odell and guys like Aguilar and Bateman, Rashad Bateman. We can't forget him in all this, by the way. I think he's going to be a very good player in this league if he can stay healthy. But I think you are going to see more passes outside the hash. I think you're going to see a different dimension. But this is where I'm going to add the intrigue here. Are they going to run the ball with J.K. Dobbins as much or Gus Edwards as much? Is Lamar going to run as much? Like, if Lamar gets blitzed or if Lamar is in the pocket too long, is he going to stay in the pocket or is he going to take off? That's where I'm curious to see where this all lies, because Greg Roman's offense definitely favored Lamar Jackson running the football. Well, Todd Monk can do the same thing.
And I got a lot of Raven calls on my national show before the season started. Oh, Rashad Bateman is going to step in and be our number one wide receiver. Yeah, how'd that work out for you? Not that great. He may have a better season.
He's a good player, but I don't think he's going to be a 1, but he could be a very good 2.
Right. That's exactly what he is. He's a 2. He's not a 1. All right. I want to ask you about something that Russell Baxter touched on with us in our first guest segment today. Asked Russell about the Eagles' offseason strength, weaknesses, and like, and he went immediately to, you got to be able to stop the run. And we know the Chiefs ran it effectively against the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Isaiah Pacheco became a household name. But let's be honest, it was an issue all year long. Eagles were number 1 against the pass, defensively yards per game, middle of the pack, like 15-16 against the run last season. There have been changes on the defense. The coordinator's a big one, but a lot of players have been swapped out and or replaced. How big an issue is that going to be for the Eagles this year? Our team's going to be able to run the football against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Well, last year when they added Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, I think during that time they were 11 for 12, if I remember doing in my Super Bowl preview. So it wasn't bad, but then that kind of got exposed in the Super Bowl with Isaiah Pacheco being able to run like he did. What did he average, John? Like 5 yards per carry in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, he had a good game. There's no question about it. But I would add to Jody's question, just part of the reason they were number 1 in pass defense is why they were number 16 or 17 in run defense. That they were trying to stop the pass at the expense. Is that a problem? In other words, because their philosophy is not going to change. So, maybe you can stay number 1 and get up to 12 or 13. But if you want to be the number 1 run defense, you're not going to be the number 1 pass defense. So is there a better middle ground or what's the best path forward?
Well, if you look at recency in the NFL, and again, I'll go to the Eagles in Tampa Bay on this. The Eagles had number 1 rush defense in 17 and won the Super Bowl, but they didn't have that great of a pass defense. And Tampa Bay's had the number 1 run defense for, I think, since 2019. They've been at least 1 or 2 the last couple of years. And
Vita baby.
Yeah, Vita Vea, exactly. And look, they've had tremendous success. Now, granted, they've also had Tom Brady a lot of that stretch, but even before that, they were winning games because of their run defense. So I actually kind of like what the Eagles do. I think it's more important to stop the pass than it is the run, because if you can just get better at tackling, I didn't think tackling was that great for them last year. And maybe this is where Nakobe Dean comes into the mix here, because from what I watched last year, I thought he was pretty good at finding the football and bringing his man down. Now, we have not seen that in a large sample size yet, but I think that's where you're really going to miss TJ Edwards too, John. I think that's where it's going to be. I'm a little concerned because I thought maybe they can be better against the run, but I don't think being 15th, 16th is that bad.
No, either do I. I don't think it's bad at all. They were just bad in a big spot. So I think it gets sort of overblown a little bit.
I think the Washington game got a lot of people a little worried about, but people seem to forget Washington ran the football 49 times. They didn't average that many yards per carry. It was only like 3.9. It was just the chunk runs, I think, was what hurt them. Like, it was first down, they would get like 6-7 yards, and then the Eagles would kind of slow them down. But you could tell what Washington was trying to do, just keep Jalen Hurts out of offense all the field.
Yeah. That Washington game was a good example. Go ahead, Jim.
I'm with you, John. To answer the question you asked to Jeff, yeah, I'd like to see better balance. If you give me my choice of a defense that's number 1 against the pass, but number 17 or 18 against the run, or I could have a team that's 4 or 5 against the pass and 4 and 5 against the run. Oh, I'll take that combination every single time. If you can look at a piece of paper and do an analytical look and go, well, we just got to run the ball against them. Well, if you come out with a decent running game and a good coaching staff and a good game plan, yeah, you could move the ball against the Philadelphia Eagles last year. I'm hoping that Sean Desai has a little bit better balance. I think they were overly protective of the pass last year and not putting enough resources toward the run. That's one of the things I'm hoping for during this offseason, that Sean Desai is going to be a little bit different. And he did hint at that. You were there, John. You got a chance to ask him a question. I thought he left the door open for it being slightly different, that there are going to be tweaks. Basic philosophy, yes, the same. And they're Sirianni based, and this is what the most important things are in my mind as the head coach for my defense to do. But I would not be surprised if they give a little bit more credence to stopping the run this year. And I'll be happy for it if that's the case.
Jeff brought up Tampa Bay, and I brought up Vita Vea. That's what the Eagles want. I mean, they want that dominant interior run stopper, and they want Jordan Davis to be that player. And if he becomes that player, I think everything takes care of itself. The question is he going to become that type of player? That I can't answer. But yeah, to Sean Desai, he was tremendous as a sort of forward-facing mouthpiece. I think already he's doing a better job than JG, but ultimately, look, saying what people want to hear is great, but if you play the same way and you play the same way with less success, here's my concern, Jeff, with Sean Desai. He's not getting 70 sacks. He's not.
No, he's not. I mean, 70 sacks is already hard to get. They could be a better defense and only have 45, 50 next year.
Well, they could be. Better's an interesting question. They can be better in spots.
Yeah, situational defense.
Yeah, situational defense. Are they going to be a better defense? They were number 2 as overall. Number 1, as Jody mentioned in the past. I think it was 16 or 17 against the run. But ultimately, are they going to be better? Well, yeah, you could be number 1. You could be better. You can be further ahead of number 2 as the number 1 pass defense, but you can have 71 sacks, I guess. But is that realistic, is what I'm trying to say.
This is an interesting correlation, John. So their number 1 pass defense last year, that was the fewest yards per game they allowed for the Eagles since 2001. And that pass defense was one of the best I've seen, with Dawkins, Vincent, Taylor, Damon Moore in the secondary. And it was kind of like the Super Bowl in that NFC Championship game when they played the Rams. As much as Kurt Warner played well in that game, he didn't beat them on deep passes, or he kind of beat them like Mahomes did. But the real difference maker in that game was Marshall Faulk. They just couldn't stop the run as well as they could stop the pass. And they were a good run stopping team at the time. And that's why I'd love to ask a guy like Hollis Thomas this. But Marshall Faulk was a difference maker there, kind of like Pacheco kind of was with the Chiefs. The only difference was Faulk was the all-world running back. Hall of Fame.
Slightly better.
Yeah,
Slightly
2,000 scrimmage yards in 4 straight years. It's never going to be matched. And Pacheco was Pacheco. So I guess you can, where I'm going with this is, if you're just better situational, like stop the 1st and 10s from being 2nd and 4s. And again, like I agree with you, John. I think this is where they want Jordan Davis to be Vita Vea, and they kind of want Jalen Carter to be prime Fletcher Cox. That seems to be fair, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's my question to both of you is expectations. Are they unrealistic? I mean, we're coming off a Super Bowl season here, and you lost in the big spot. So that's kind of what I said. So there's more spotlight on it. So pretty damn good defense, and that wasn't good enough. So I kind of feel sorry for Sean Desai.
And it's a really good offense. It's a really good offense too. I feel bad for Brian Johnson because they take a little step back, but they're still explosive.
Yeah,
they're gonna get on him, and it's really unfair. Like, so we have to do game by game schedule predictions for a lot of teams at CBS, and we have to correlate all of them. Well, I got stuck with the Eagles. I'm looking at the schedule, and I'm thinking early on, I'm thinking late on, and I said, I think I'm 3-2 in that like 5-game gauntlet they have. I think they can win 13, 14 games again. And I actually had them at 14-3, and I started laughing. I'm like, there's no way this is going to be right. But I did say they were going 12-5 last year, so I guess you can say I was close.
If they get an easy start and an easy finish, they got that very tough gauntlet in the middle.
Yeah.
I think the schedule lays out great for the Eagles. If
if
you knew the teams you were playing and you knew you're going to have to play because you got enough good teams, playoff teams from last year, a group of teams together, where would I want to put it? Yeah, like starting in week 10 and going to week 5. That would be the perfect place for me. Give me a great, easy start, a lot of transition, coaches, players, and the like. Let me get off to a good start. Let me work, have that tough spot pretty much in the middle, and then let me finish up easy when I need to get wins. Oh, the Giants who we own and the Cardinals. I don't know.
My biggest gripe with the schedule was when I saw they played the Chiefs. I'm like, please don't tell me the Chiefs are coming off a bye too. Yes, they are. So I'm like, oh,
yeah, but that's fair and balanced too. I like that.
Yeah. I do too. But it's like one of those. Like, why can't one of them get the bye, and why can't one of them be the? I started laughing because we all know Andy Reid's record.
Andy, baby. Andy,
what is he? 20-4 with the bye or something like that. It's insane.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that much begging from an Eagle perspective. All right, let me ask you this about this upcoming season. They got a new offensive coordinator. They got a new defensive coordinator. We were just hinting at the fact that they're not going to get as many sacks as they did last year, which means Sean Desai is going to feel the anger of the Eagle fans who all live for the blitz, the blitz, the blitz, the blitz, the blitz. And they're not going to blitz. Not as long as Sirianni's head coach. They're just not going to do that. But then again, on the offensive side, Brian Johnson, good guy, also handled his first foray with the media and the fans pretty well as well. Very tight with Jalen Hurts, but they had a very prolific offense last year. Their offense might not be as good as it was last year. Who is going to be tougher to replace, Shane Steichen or Jonathan Gannon?
Oh, Shane Steichen. Just look at his development of Jalen Hurts. Look at his development of Justin Herbert. Anthony Richardson's in great hands. And Brian Johnson is no slouch here. I think he's a good coach too. But Shane Steichen is – I think he's going to be a really good head coach in this league. I just think he knows how to develop quarterbacks. I think he knows how to call a game very well. It's definitely Shane Steichen over Jonathan Gannon to me. I think Jonathan Gannon had a great year last year. I think Jonathan Gannon is definitely going to be a coordinator, a longtime coordinator in this league, and not that great of a head coach. But we'll see. I mean, I'm just going off optics here and the franchise he's with. But I think Shane Steichen's going to be that guy. He could be a head coach for a long time in this league. He plays his cards right. But by the way, Jody, you might have something going here with Sean the guy. Just so you know.
Sean the guy.
I mean, yeah.
I'm gonna disagree with you, and people are gonna jump down my throat
Here we go.
I like Jonathan Gannon. Blah blah blah. Has nothing to do with Jonathan Gannon or Shane Steichen. By the way, I love Shane Steichen. Probably closer to Shane Steichen than Jonathan Gannon. People don't know that, but there you go. For this one reason, Nick Sirianni's the guy on offense. So any offensive head coach, the defensive coordinator is a bigger deal than the offensive coordinator. Any of them. Take the names off. And vice versa. If it's a defensive coach, the offensive coordinator is more important than the defensive coordinator. This is Nick Sirianni's offense. He lets insert name run the defense. Now, he's got a couple sort of hurdles you have to reach. and he wants you to do certain things. But for the most part, you have significant autonomy. From that standalone reason, I think the defensive coordinator is more important than the offensive coordinator. Thoughts?
I can agree with that statement. And again, with Desai, I don't know if he will be as good as Gannon. I will say this to you, John, and Jody, you know this too. I think Gannon gets a really bad rap in the city for being a really good coordinator. I mean, everybody's going to look at the Super Bowl and, you know, him giving up 38 points, but you also gave up 38 points to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. A lot of teams seem to do that. Kansas City Chiefs, I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals didn't have that great of a defensive performance against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid either, and look who their defensive coordinator is. So, and they have one of the better ones in football. So, yeah, I think Gannon gets a bad rap, no doubt about it. I just think you can't replace what Steichen can develop in a quarterback and how he can take that quarterback good in year one, great in year two. That's what I think they're going to miss. I don't know if Brian Johnson could do that, but I trust it because he's been with Jalen Hurts and with that family for so long. It's, you know, those two just see eye to eye. So that's where I would agree with you, and it would be harder to replace Gannon, but I still would go with Steichen.
Yeah, we'll see how much autonomy that Sean Desai has. As I think you pointed out here last week, John, at least Nick Sirianni had ties to these guys prior to. That there's two coordinators he knew, coached in the NFL with, had a very tight relationship with. Brian Johnson, he didn't know until he joined him on his staff, and I'm sure he was in on the hire, but it was surely a Howie Roseman suggestion. And, of course, Sean Desai coming in from outside the organization to begin with. It'd be interesting to see how the previous relationship with those guys actually factors into Nick Sirianni putting his stamp on their sides of the football. Maybe it's just optimistic at this point, but I think Sean Desai is going to do a little bit more changing with the defense than most people would heading into the season. All right, a question we haven't tackled in a couple of weeks here. But I want to get your take on it, Jeff. I don't think we asked you last time you were on. Zach Pascal, major loss for the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe the coach's favorite player. Loves that blocking wide receiver or wide receiver three. Call him whatever you want. Have the Eagles successfully replaced Zach Pascal this offseason?
They signed Omalade Zaccheaus. Of course they did.
Wait a minute. What was Zach? Talk about measurables. What were Zach Pascal's measurables?
A lot bigger than Omalade.
Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I would
Zach's a
say,
big dude.
Yeah. If you're going by, so I still remember seeing Zach Pascal for the first time last year, and he walked past me and just kind of nodded his head, and I'm like, wow, this guy's pretty big. I didn't realize how big Zach Pascal. I can see why he's made a career in the NFL here, but I think that's where we're going to see a more explosive offense because you're going to have a guy like Zaccheaus in the slot. I'm assuming he's going to play the slot. And what he was able to do in Atlanta last year with little to nothing at quarterback, and no disrespect to Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder here, but that offense was predicated on running the football down your throats with a really good run blocking offensive line. And he was kind of like, okay, you're the number two behind Drake London. Now he's going to be an offense with A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Quez Watkins. You know, I think he could beat Watkins out for the three. In fact, I'll say it. I think he does beat Watkins out for the three spot. So, thoughts, Sean?
Joseph Nada, baby.
Yeah.
Receiver. 6'3", 215.
Good,
I don't know if
good
he
one.
can block, but
We'll find out.
I think he's an undrafted guy to keep an eye on. We'll see how things shake out. Last one for me, at Jeff Kerr, CBS. Follow Jeff there on Twitter. Read him, cbssports.com. Does a tremendous job. June 1st is coming.
It is.
Is Howie, he's already getting all the accolades, 2-time executive of the year. Has he got a plan post June 1st? Is there going to be a splash? We're going to get an all-ball linebacker. What is Howie going to do post June 1st, if anything?
I'll telling you, I know he has a good relationship with Eric DaCosta. I'll just say this. If Patrick Queen's available.
Ah, my
like
guy,
Jody.
Gipper. That's what I like to hear.
If he's available, I wouldn't be surprised to at least see them call and try to work something if he's available. I still haven't gotten word out of there whether he is or not. I talked to a lot of people with the Ravens, but they don't give you anything. If silent as the grave is definitely the mantra in Baltimore.
All right, so let me put it to you, because this is one that John and I disagree on. And he's got the strength of past performances because of the way Howie Roseman has done his business. If you want a guy of that level at linebacker, I think it's a third-round draft pick. I don't think you're getting him for a fourth or a fifth or a sixth or a seventh. I think you need to get into the third round to get him. Don't have to go to the second, but I think just off what he's done so far in the league, the level of player he is, last year of a contract, I think he's at a cost of a third-round pick. Agree or disagree? Would Howie Roseman go there if that's the price?
I think he avoids the third and adds a player to it. And then gives up like a lower pick.
Derek Barnett. That'll get Jody happy.
That's one of my. Can I call the bold prediction? Derek Barnett will not be on this team by.
No, I don't think it's bold, but
no, because I've been saying it for months.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think you need to be in the know with Derek Barnett to know he's probably not going to be around.
I don't think they're just going to release him, though. I think they're going to try to get something for him.
And the Ravens do need some pass rushing help, and I think they'd be willing to take a flyer on a proven veteran, I guess you can call him.
Somewhat proven veteran. Yeah, I mean, something's coming. I cannot believe the Eagles are going to open the season with Nakobe Dean and Nicholas Morrow. Nakobe Dean, yes.
I don't either.
Something's coming.
By the way, John, this is going to be the $1 million question. Will we be at the NovaCare complex, watching minicamp, writing our stories?
No, we're not going to be watching minicamp. I know that.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, will we be in the auditorium when Howie makes the call?
No. Well, Howie's not going to be anywhere near us.
No,
Howie's season is, let's see.
We will hear Howie to what? Maybe the 53 when they make the final 53?
Yeah. Every once in a while, if Howie's in a good mood, he'll drop in and talk to us, but usually off the record. As far as on the record, probably 53. Yeah. Unless there's a big trade. If there's a big trade, a splashy trade, and even a Patrick Queen trade,
I think
probably not. Probably not.
Probably 53. Let me play Eric.
I like about Roseman and Laurie. They don't talk much, which I kind of like that about them.
Let me play Eric DaCosta for a second. You guys can play Howie Roseman. Give me a yay or nay. All right, you won't give me the third round pick? Fine, I'll take a fourth. But you got to give me Suopeta.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah. Well, can I drive him there?
Yeah. They don't care. No. Yeah.
I'd rather have Suopeta in offensive line depth than Derek Barnett.
Yeah.
They'll find another Suopeta. I'll drive him there myself. I'll take him in my Honda CRV. I'll do the job for
you. Yeah, I think you're taking too much into that Jason Kelsey Tesla quote. The Tesla stock is sunk. Yeah.
I rode in more Teslas in the Super Bowl than I ever will in my life. I'll just say that.
I love Teslas. I love them. I told Jody I got a Tesla for an Uber once. I didn't know how to open the door. I'm like, what do I do here?
So,
I've never been around a Tesla.
If you guys are not as big a fan of Suopeta as I am, all right, how about Driscoll instead if they ask for him?
Eagles don't want to give up Driscoll. That's different.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be willing to drive him to Baltimore.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's the sixth man, Jack Driscoll. He's an
right.
important part.
He's the upgraded version of Bailey Falter for the Eagles.
That's not good. Well, he better be better than that this year because Bailey has not gotten off to a good start.
Well, you know where I'm going with this 6-starter, that type of thing. But
Yeah.
I think he's a lot better version. If we're trying to do
0-7 for Bailey this year. That's not easy to do. 0-7 a quarter of the way into the season. He's on a pace to be 0-28 for the year since we're about a quarter.
Hey, I was on a Twitter crusade. I can't wait till the day Bailey Falter is out of the starting rotation. I got my wish.
Yes, you did. And we'll see who the Phillies.
And you got to mute the knuckleheads, Jeff. Just mute them.
I do mute them. You know what, John? One day at training camp, I'm going to show you all the people I muted on Twitter.
All right.
And a lot of them happen to be from a certain fan base.
I got a phone book of mutes at this point.
It's your black book of mute button.
Turn good stuff. Always a pleasure, brother. We'll be touching base again soon enough. Thanks for jumping in with us today.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Read him on cbssports.com. Jeff Kerr always has a insight and maybe a laugh with us whenever he comes on. All right, Mac and Mac coming back. We're running out of time. We got to put a bow on the show.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction. Go with trust.
Go Birds!
And go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia Dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
All right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake 'em out. Mama, go up, up, up.
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Mac and Mac guys, here on Birds 365. We just got a minute or two here to close out the show. All right, JM, there's going to be a whole bunch of guys who do what you do. That's a beat reporter for an NFL team. And they'll actually have to get to work today because there's going to be 20 teams going OTAs. And there'll be stories surrounding the teams because of it, not because of anything they're going to do on the field. Somebody may look great in shorts. Oh, my God, did you see him run down the sideline? He looks so fast. Ridiculous. But there's always a possibility of something breaking story, negotiation, and the like. What are we going to be talking about tomorrow? If we look at something breaking in the National Football League, Any crystal ball predictions here that?
I don't think anything big is coming down till June 1st, as I kind of mentioned. You know what's going on, Jody? We got to keep an eye on. Your favorite, Chris Sims, is counting down his top 40 quarterbacks currently. It's going to be interesting. We're going to get a whole show out of when he puts Jalen Hurts. He can't leave Jalen Hurts out of it, so he'll probably have put him at like 12 or something just to get people fired up. But he is currently
he can't. He's got to be top 10 now.
Well, would think
some people would have him top 5.
He should be top 5. He should be top 5. You would think, but Chris, I mean, and I think we were talking about.
Yeah, I do know, Chris, and apparently we disagree. I just think he doesn't know football. I don't think he's smart enough to do it on purpose to get people overly excited about things. And I think, at least that's what I read into
already
he's doing it on purpose. That he has an actual list, and then he gets his changed list to get more reaction via social media or whatever. I don't think he's smart enough to do that.
I think he's a reaction guy, but you might be right. He's at, he's already at 31. What bothers me already, he's got Anthony Richardson at 36, CJ Stroud at 37, Bryce Young at 38. Why are those guys even in it? Leave the rookies out of it. They're either going to be much better than that or worse than nobody knows anything about the rookies, but anyway.
Yeah, I think you got to put him in because first of all, you got to have 40 because you got to drag it out and get as much.
You got backups.
Get as much content out of it as you possibly can.
You got backups.
So should he rank Carson Wentz?
No, he doesn't need. There's everybody's got backup quarterbacks. He's got Desmond Ridder 40, Sam Howell 39. I mentioned the rookies: Bryce Young 38, Stroud 37, Richardson 36. He's got Mike White, your ex guy, 35. Gardner Minshew, 34. Taylor Heineke, 33. Jared Stidham, 32. Oof. Jordan Love, 31. That's where he is currently. Jordan Love at 31.
So he's actually using backups.
Yeah. Well, Gardner might be the starter, unless you want to. They're going to go with Anthony Richardson week 1. So kind of dependent.
I think if it were me and I were doing a list, I'd pick 32 starters. If there's some debate on a team, you got to make a call. You got to say who you think is going to start and give me 32. But since he's going 40 deep, he's got to use some backups. Well, he's got to use the guys who are going to start, even if they are rookies. I got no issue with. But he'll have Jalen top 10. He won't have him outside the top. He can't have him outside the top 10 off the season.
He can do what he wants. Chris Sims is a wild card.
He will be called on the carpet as he has been previously here in Philadelphia, even more so going forward. All right, brother, let's do this again tomorrow. You in?
Let's do it.
The Mac and Mac guys will be back here on Birds 365 in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.